Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Here we are, baby.
Folks, if you are watching this when it releases, it released second week in July of 2025, and there is no coincidence why we're releasing this at this
Oh, yeah.
time. For those of you that may or may not know, there is a new live-action studio universe, cinematic universe rather, kicking off for DC in the
Yeah.
form of the DCU. We're talking about James Gunn's Superman. And technically speaking, if you want to get a little sweaty, Creature Commandos,
Oh,
late
yeah.
2024 was the kickoff animated, HBO Max. But now, here come the live action movies and such. And Ricardo and I were talking, and we wanted to take the opportunity to look back at the boss, at Zack Snyder's Snyderverse.
The
And
blueprint.
yes. And just briefly touch on the movies that we know to be a part of the Snyderverse, or movies that that never came out that were supposed to be a part of the Snyderverse, and just to
Yeah.
get the discussion going, because as far as the Snyderverse goes, just more information just keeps coming out about it, all the individual movies and the
Oh, yeah.
plan that Zach had. And seeing as how we did breakdowns for all of his movies, including his DC movies, we thought this would just be the perfect opportunity to get the conversation started and see where things go, not only for this podcast or future podcasts that we do.
Yeah. The Snyderverse is interesting because a lot of times when people think about the Snyderverse, they're kind of like, oh, you mean the movies that Snyder only directed? It's like, no, the Snyderverse is much bigger than that. You had Snyderverse films directed by Patty Jenkins, James Wan. You had Wonder Woman. You got Suicide Squad with David Ayer. You had Aquaman by James Wan. So, like, they're all in that same sandbox because they do not exist outside of the quote-unquote Snyderverse. So it's going to be fun to actually dive into all of those things, where we were possibly going to go, what got cut short, what we got to see, how plans may have been altered. I think we've owed it to ourselves for a while to actually just like talk about that thing. We've talked about individual movies, but to kind of talk about the whole arc, the plan, what could have been, etc. I think there's a lot of juice there for us to get into because, like you said, like there's still information coming out. Like there was information dropped like a week ago. It was like, oh, hey, here's some more designs for what Snyder's universe Green Lanterns were going to look like. And we get to see the concept art. And it's like, oh, wow, like this is completely brand new stuff that we hadn't seen before. So there's still plenty of meat on the bone for us to like get at.
All right. And as we're getting started here, folks, just wanted to remind you, if you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros. We'd appreciate it. That's just going to help us with our reach. So thank you, folks, for your support.
Yeah.
All righty. So let's just get into this here. And we will touch on, if, as far as what we said with our breakdowns with the movies and such. And just to remind you, folks, like to go through everything, we would be here for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
So we're just going to briefly touch on each film and then hopefully maybe branch out and do those individual films as a discussion. So let's take a peek here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the original plan. And let's take a look at that here. All right, so I found this graphic here, and I apologize if I use this, and I don't know who created it, so I apologize to the individual that made this. But this was the plan that was originally made when Zach was announced to do his movies. And it was going to be called the DCEU. And Zack Snyder was going to produce all of the movies. He would only direct a handful of them. So this was prior to 2013. So I want to say 2011, 2012, maybe even 2010. But 2013 would have been the kickoff with Man of Steel. And 2016, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, as well as Suicide Squad. And then 2017, Wonder Woman and Justice League Part 1. So everything released as it was supposed to, as far as the years go. But that's when things started getting a little shaky, obviously, because Zack's cut of Justice League did not get released. It was Joss Whedon's cut of Justice League. And also Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, was not released in theaters. It was the studio cut, but it was still close enough where, you know, it wasn't too much of a controversy. From that 2018, 2019, and 2020 window there, which Warner Brothers did have planned, that's when they just threw everything out. So
that's when it got complicated. Like once we started to hit after Justice League, things started to get real shaky on releases, ideas, canceled movies. Like, look, there's a Cyborg movie there. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of changes following, you know, the Justice League, if you will.
Correct. Yeah. So some of them still made their release year, some didn't. So in 2018, they had planned on The Flash solo, Aquaman solo, and then an untitled DC film. Now, that untitled DC film, the rumors that would have been Ben Affleck's The Batman.
The Batman.
If you saw the end of Justice League with that, that post-credit scene there. So that's what 2018 would have been. And then 2019 would have been Shazam, Justice League Part 2, and another untitled DC film. And the rumor for that was that it would have been the Man of Steel sequel. To my understanding. So Shazam still came out. Obviously, the other two did not. And then 2020 would have been Cyborg and then Green Lantern Corps. And obviously, those never came out. Now, this was the original plan. We don't know if it was going to end with Green Lantern or if there was more movies that were going to be added on. But we will get into that as we discuss the Snyderverse here. So this was just pretty much the foundation. To our understanding, Zack wanted to do this for about, I want to say 10 years. So we probably would have gotten more movies up until 2023, and then there would have been a reboot. How do you feel about that, Ricardo?
Yeah, and as if I remember correctly, Zack had went in with the idea that a beginning, middle, and end, right? Like we were at the time now where universes were exploding, the MCU was exploding, there was no end in sight, and Zack came in and was like, well, I'm going to come in. He goes, I love what they're doing. Zack has always been very positive about what Marvel's doing as well. Like he's not one of those people to throw shade, and Zack had been like, nah, I think what they're doing is amazing, it's great. I'm trying to do this. So I always found it interesting that he had an idea for a beginning, middle, and end, and what many people call the 5-film arc. And the studio's like, well, we want to branch off. He's like, oh, go for it, man. Feel free. Do this, and do that. So at the time, I was super excited what we were getting. Now it's very bittersweet because, while I was excited now knowing that, those ideas never really came to be, they never came to pass due to a lot of the changes. You had mentioned, Batman v Superman with some cuts. Yeah, weirdly enough, it was just that they cut up 30 minutes. That was pretty much it. So like you said, there wasn't a real controversy around BVS. It's just there was a 30-minute cut from the film. And I will say, after seeing the Ultimate Edition, like those 30 minutes, like they fleshed some things out relatively well that I do wish they kept in. But studios are going to studio. You want more screenings, you want more showings. Trim it down. If you can take 30 minutes off, take 30 minutes off. A lot of movies deal with that, and that's no different. But I was really excited, and whenever we see that kind of like lineup, there's a little bit of nostalgia there, and just remembering when that first came out, and being kind of like, oh wow, look what we have to look forward to. But like you said, once we hit a certain point, everything got really, really, really shaky.
Now we will talk about Jay Oliver a little bit later. But he pretty much confirmed it that Zack only had a 5-film arc. It was just going to be Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and a Justice League trilogy. That's it.
Yep. So, and he was out. In and out. Yep.
Right. Like there was no universe. It was just like, I have this planned. And then Warner Brothers looked at it and said, no, we can do a universe with this. So as a director, we're going to say no.
Exactly.
You're not going to say no. Exactly. So Zack was just like, hey, let me direct my 5 movies, and I guess I'm just going to end up producing the other ones, and we'll see what happens, So that's what ended up happening. And then obviously, Warner Brothers being reactionary, as they often are, they saw the critical acclaim or lack of critical acclaim, and that's when they started making those moves to change everything up. So we're not going to get into financial and stuff like that because we already talked about that. But you know, plenty of those movies versus the budget were pretty financially successful. Every movie up until Wonder Woman 2017 was financially successful.
Yes.
Versus what the budget was.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because I do think there is a misconception that the movies didn't do well financially. Well, while some of these movies, yes, did not do well critically, financially they were all successful. I would say the most successful critically were movies like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, when it came to critical score. But when it came to box office, like if we look at all those right there, like Man of Steel made over $600 million. And many people would argue, like, well, it's not $1 billion. Well, at the time in 2013, we weren't really revving that engine up yet. It's the first film. So that did well.
And by the way, looking back, that's the most financially successful solo Superman movie of all time.
Of all time. So, and if you take into consideration that it's not called Superman, a lot of people like it's such a minor thing, right? It's a very minor thing, but there is something of a casual audience that will look at a lineup and see Man of Steel and not know it's a Superman movie. I know it's hard to understand because whereas like comic fans and everything, how do you not know? You know what I mean? But it happens. So like you said, all these movies were pretty financially successful, all within the Snyderverse. Aquaman made over $1 billion. Yeah, $1 billion, unreal.
Yeah, that and I'll be honest with you, that was surprising because that was, and it depends on who you talk to if they include that in the Snyderverse or not. But that was in 2018. That was the year after. That one might have been the first movie after Joss Whedon Justice League, who would just panned. Everything was going so bad, and it ended up making $1 billion. So and Zack got a producer credit on it, and it's unconfirmed how much he was involved in that prior to his exit from Warner Brothers. But some people say that based upon just the way that it looked, and James Wan throwing his horror / action adventure flair on it, it fit with the Snyderverse tone a little bit,
It did, absolutely. And what I love, and talking about like Zack serving as a producer and how much he was involved, I think James Wan did incredible directing Aquaman. But I love that James Wan was very open about reaching out to Zack and say, hey, there's certain aspects that I want to explore for the first time in Aquaman. Is there any way we can avoid doing that early? So Zack was like, you got it. Zack did not show Atlantis. Zack did not give him the traditional Aquaman armor. Zack did not give him the trident. Like, Zack made it so that James had all these things that the world could see for the first time. And I think that's really cool.
All right. So obviously just with this big plan here, like we're already doing it, we can hit on all these movies one at a time, but we will save that for, for other podcasts here. We're just going to move on here. And we're going to take a look at just the the movies individually and touch on them as best as we can. So all right, so first up, we're just going to take a look at the Justice League trilogy that by the way, I'm borrowing from Warner Brothers. We didn't realize that this is what this thing was called until they packaged it and said Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy, and the
trilogy.
You could see the lulls and laughing reaction emojis everywhere because what do you mean trilogy? It's not finished.
No, it's not done, baby. We know they were trying to be slick. It's like, no, you get complete trilogy. I'm like, that is a lie. It is not complete, but
three of five. 3 of 5. But in any case, these were his 3 DC movies that he directed, and obviously we did breakdowns for all of these on the channel here. Feel free to check those out. We have Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Ultimate Edition, and of course Zack Snyder's Justice League. # release the Snyder Cut. These 3 movies just obviously these are Zack's movies. They are all just they're him, they're his vision. They go along with what he had planned. And, as we started learning about more stuff outside of these movies, it's like, we only got a taste of what was to come, but it was just like a building, it was like, here's Man of Steel. And then the next level is going to be BVS. And now Justice League Part 1 of 3, which at the time we had no idea was going to happen. But, looking back, I mean, just such an awesome 3 movies, and an incredible foundation for what would go on to be known as the Snyderverse one day.
Yeah, and what I love about it now, as we look at the images especially, it looks like you see the natural progression, right? In the Man of Steel poster, Superman is flying alone. Then you have Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, where now we're bringing in Wonder Woman, we're bringing in Batman, and the question of can a being like Superman be trusted, and Batman almost being an antagonist. And then you have Zack Snyder's Justice League, where they're actually coming together and bringing out other heroes. Like, there's this natural progression of the story, and I do enjoy that we did get to see that, at least.
Yeah.
Just being able to get Zack Snyder's Justice League was a miracle in itself. And I've always said it, like, that was the victory, that was the win.
Yeah.
And I know there are many people that are clamoring for more. And trust me, if we got more, I would be super ecstatic. But like, I'll always look at that as the victory.
Yeah.
Like, that was something that's never been done before.
Yeah, to borrow your words, Ricardo, we won, folks.
We won. Like,
we won.
I try to tell people sometimes, like, we won. Like, understand that it was so significant that because of that, people want release the Joel Schumacher cut of Batman Forever.
Right.
People want to release what was it? The Russos, when the Russos said, "Oh, there's a 6-hour cut of one of the Avengers movies," and they were like, "Oh, release!" Like, it became a thing where fans were like, "Wait a minute, do we have this power? Let's try it. Release the Ayer cut. Let's try it." And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you see all 3 of those movies lined up together, I just can't help but feel like really happy and lucky that we got to see them. Because it's no secret that we enjoyed those movies. I enjoyed those movies very much so. But you can see the plan, and I think it's really, really awesome when you can see the plan building in the films. Each film was able to stand on its own while also being like, okay, there's more room to explore something in each movie, that he was able to do that. So we're lucky we got to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking for the thing that you sent me recently where someone gave a shout out to Christopher Nolan and saying that, like,
Clay. It was Clay.
Oh, Clay Staub, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So while you're looking that up, so basically, a lot of people forget that Christopher Nolan had an idea for Superman, and he wrote the story for it with David Goyer.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this idea, but Christopher Nolan did not want to direct it. So then a search began, and we talked about this when we did our breakdowns. The search began for who would direct the Superman movie, and eventually the search came to Zack Snyder. And Nolan's fingerprints are all over that movie. It feels like a Christopher Nolan movie and a Zack Snyder movie combined.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's okay if you don't find it, but I just think it's great that people are still talking about it, and it was just like a little gentle reminder, like, hey guys, I know we're moving on, and there's going to be a new cinematic universe here, but let's not forget the cinematic universe kicked off with Zack Snyder directing Man of Steel, but Nolan was the one that believed in him, before they moved forward with that.
Oh yeah, like it was so cool. And look, Clay tweets a lot. Like, I'm going through his account and I'm trying to find it, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I was like, Clay tweets a lot, and it's just one of those things where,
okay, I found it.
You found it. Great.
I found it. Yeah. So
all right, go ahead and read it. Read it for
I'll read it for you. Yeah. This is Clay Staub, and he's a filmmaker, right? He's worked.
He's worked with Zack. Yeah.
He's worked with Zack. So he shared a picture of Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder with each other, and it says, "What people idolize about Christopher Nolan is that he's true to his vision, and yet we forget Nolan personally selected Zack for Man of Steel to bring Superman into our world, a universe closer to Nolan's own Dark Knight trilogy. I'm sorry if you didn't get the memo."
Yeah, and look, I like Clay. Clay has been very outspoken about how he feels with certain things, and it's great. And it's also because he's coming from someone with experience. But using Christopher Nolan, I should say, is a great example of someone who is an absolute professional like Nolan. Look, we said all the time, in Nolan we trust, and it's anytime Nolan casts someone or pitches a movie, we're like, we're sold. Like we trust you. So when you have a visionary and someone like Nolan who does not, he always fights for his integrity, right? Like he fights for his vision. Like Nolan believes in the art and having your vision and being protected. You know, many people would argue that Man of Steel got to be what Man of Steel was because Nolan was protecting Zack. Like we've heard that where he was like, hey, like Nolan made sure Zack stayed off of Zack's back so he can make this movie. And you know, Clay's right. Like we have a guy like Nolan who is all about protecting the vision, and he's a guy who handpicked Snyder. And I just think that's such a great seal of confidence. You know what I mean? Like it's a great recommendation. Look, I said Christopher Nolan picks you for anything. It's like, okay, Chris has got something, even if I don't see it right away. You know, even if I'm like, oh, really? Even if I don't see it right away, I'm like, no, I trust Nolan.
Yeah, and you know, let's not take anything away from Zack. You know, Zack directed a great movie, but you could just tell Nolan's fingerprints were on it just a little bit. You know,
you felt.
Yeah, and the ending, Zack fought for that. You know, Nolan was against it. The big decision, so to speak. We don't want to get into it here.
Yes.
The big decision, that Superman made. Nolan was against it. He's like, I don't know about that, but Zack fought for it, and he said, you know what? It's your movie.
Yeah, it's your movie, and
Go
like,
for it.
there's nothing better you can ask for is that when someone goes, hey, I wouldn't do it that way, I don't agree. And then for Zack to explain how it's going to work, and Nolan's like, you know what? That's your vision, baby. Go for it. You know what I mean? And yes, you feel the non-linear storytelling in Man of Steel that's very reminiscent to Batman Begins.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's what was so great about it. I remember watching Man of Steel for the first time and feeling like, oh, like we had that amazing introduction with the new Batman with Christian Bale in Batman Begins, non-linear storytelling, just amazing. And as we were watching Man of Steel, it was going through my head like, oh man, I can feel it. Like I can feel the blueprint. You know, I can feel it. And that was awesome.
All right. So before I move on here, like obviously we can talk about, you know, the Snyder Justice League trilogy, you know, forever. Oh, yeah. You know, there's so many things we can touch on. I will say this, you know, you stack those movies versus the rest of the Snyderverse, and to a point, the rest of the DCEU. I feel like they're just so epic.
Yeah, they feel
they feel so epic, and you know, when Zack makes a movie, he wants to make a big movie as far as these DC movies go.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, so let's move on to the next movie here. This is a movie that we have yet to do a breakdown for and give your girl Patty Jenkins some love.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Wonder Woman 2017. Oh boy.
What a great time, man.
Oh, such an epic movie. So prior to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, we had never gotten Wonder Woman in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
We just had Linda Carter live action TV show, but never in the movie. So,
mm-hmm.
You know, Gal made this incredible debut in BVS. Obviously, well, at the time it was, you know, Justice League, but this would have been her third movie in the timeline and such. And it was just such a surprise when it came out because people were just, oh, actually, no, I apologize. This came out before Justice League.
Yeah.
So this was the
was right after BVS. They went heavy with like get Wonder Woman out there.
Yeah. So it was BVS and then Suicide Squad and then Wonder Woman the following year and then Justice League that fall. So they were just like, hey, we want to give her a little solo movie before we give you Justice League, guys. And such a great movie, such great action sequences. And we're going to talk about why this is part of the Snyderverse in a second here. But for me, just such a hopeful movie, such emotional beats. The screenshot that I shared was from No Man's Land, which is probably the best scene in the whole movie. And what a great movie. I'll let you get in here, Ricardo, but Patty Jenkins did such a great job. But you know, here we go. We talked about fingerprints. Zack's fingerprints were all over this movie. So please, Ricardo.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I would love to be a fly on the wall and know if Wonder Woman was already pitched prior to BVS or if it was a reaction, because again, Warner Brothers can be very reactionary, because there was, even for people who heavily criticized Batman v Superman, there was some key points that people really enjoyed. One was Ben Affleck as Batman, and another one was Gal as Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's introduction was so BA, and everyone was like, whoa, like the action sequences was her. They saved her for the final battle. She was excellent. And you're kind of like, yeah, I want to see that movie, you know? And they did the prequel. We get to go to Themyscira, and Patty Jenkins does a wonderful job as a director. Like the entire movie worked. And again, she fought for a scene in that movie, No Man's Land. The No Man's Land scene, she had to fight for that movie. Warner Brothers considered cutting it for time, and Patty fought for it. And it's easily, there are scenes, and I'll stick to comic book movies because movies in general, yes, but I'll stick to comic book movies, that when it comes to comic book films, there's sometimes where you can feel like we're regurgitating the same thing. We get the same type of plot. Like there's so many comic book films in the world that you feel like, oh, it's very similar to this. And then there's certain moments and scenes that kind of stand out and feel special and unique. And No Man's Land scene is one of them. Like I remember just feeling like so hopeful and optimistic, getting goosebumps when that scene happened. It was incredible. And the movie just works on all fronts. And like you said, you can kind of feel Zack's blueprints. You can feel some of the great action shots. And I would not be surprised if Zack's stunt team and action coordinators were working with Patty to make these action sequences, and Patty seemed to adopt some of the slow motion style from Zack so we can implement some great action sequences, slow motion, you know, like it just worked, and it was able to be its own thing while still feeling like it's part of the quote unquote Snyderverse.
Yeah, it's unconfirmed, and I don't think that this would have happened, but it's people use the word shadow direct.
Yeah, I've heard that term as well.
And they said that for this, that there's a small chance that Zack shadow directed Wonder Woman, but Patty Jenkins, you know, his name is on the banner there, and we're talking about a very accomplished director here with Patty Jenkins.
Yeah. Like this is Patty Jenkins. Like come on now, like.
Yeah, we're talking about Monster. Charlie, she got,
you know what I mean?
Her
like,
Oscar, you know, like
got
come
the
on,
Oscar. You know, Patty is no slouch. So I'm one of those people. I have heard that term, and I get why people say it, because again, there's certain, like I said, there's similarities in the shooting style, the stunts, and the choreography. But I think it's only fair to give Patty her due. I think Patty 100% directed that movie, but I think Patty also wanted to make sure that it felt like they are in the same universe. I feel like that was her goal, to be like, okay, hey, look. This is how Zack Snyder's universe looks. This is how it feels. This is how the action feels. This is how the action looks. So I do think she wanted to implement that style. So I would not be surprised if they had conversations, but I don't think that we had a ghost director or a shadow director in Zack Snyder. I think Patty gets all the credit for this.
You know, very accomplished director, and also that doesn't feel like Zack to me. That's not something Zack would do.
Yeah, Zack has always been. I remember, and I remember when they were talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out, and they had asked him, like, would you be okay with releasing a movie that is yours but someone else directed scenes from? And he said he would rather burn the film than release a movie with his name on it if he didn't direct it. So when he has that level of integrity, again, he's an artist, he fights for his movies. So I don't think for a second he'd be like, yes, I'm going to just, I'm going to shadow direct this movie. No. I think Zack's better than that. And again, I would not be surprised if they had conversations, whether it's about, any particular thing, but I think Patty ultimately is the head honcho of this film. I think she is the director, and I think she deserves all the credit for the success of the movie.
Yeah. So the thing is with the rumor is because apparently Zack's stunt team and visual effects team, once again not confirmed, but it's been heavily hinted at through the industry that it's the same team.
Yeah, so I think it's the same team. I think she worked with Zack's team 100%. I
believe so too, because there's some parts of this movie where it felt like scenes in Man of Steel or
Mhm.
BVS, you know. So
Yeah.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You know,
No.
you're making a cinematic universe. You want the movies to feel a little bit like each other, maybe
Mhm.
not look like each other exactly, but at least feel like each other a little bit. And
Yeah.
you know, was Zach on set? Probably. Was he
Mhm.
directing? No.
No, I don't think he was directing. We saw him on set the one day where he's actually in one of the photos that they take on film. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't think he was directing any of the movie, but I do think 100% that they had the same stunt team and visual effects team because things looked great, man. Like the action sequence in this movie where she's running through no man's land and they go into the tower and the big fights and the slow motion. Like I was like, yes, this all feels like it's part of the same world. And I think it's credit to Patty working with that team.
So we will be doing a breakdown for Wonder Woman 27 one day.
That's going to be a good one, dude.
Yeah, it'll be fun to talk about. And I will say this: a lot of people talk about Gal Gadot's um, acting and such
Mhm.
over the years, and I feel like it was interesting just the choices she made for that movie as far as energy goes. Like,
Mhm.
um, you know, it wasn't this uh, Meryl Streep type situation, but you know, you went from somebody who, you know, just stoic and you know, just that performance that she had in BVS, and then we got to see all these emotions. You know, she swung for the fences basically,
Yeah.
in Wonder Woman 2017. And you know, once again, you know, we're not looking at this this all time amazing performance, absolutely not. But I feel like Gal, if not for Gal, Wonder Woman 2017 wouldn't have been as fun as it was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because people walked away. Again, there was a lot of criticism when she was casted because people wanted a more muscular woman, a bigger woman, someone with more acting experience. But I think it was kind of hard for people to not refer to her as Wonder Woman, following her role because it was just like, oh no, like that's her. I see it. I see Wonder Woman. Okay.
Absolutely. All righty, let's move on here, folks. Okay, so this is where things start getting a little shaky here. So you are looking at a screenshot from David Ayer's Suicide Squad. So
Yeah.
this hashtag release the Ayer cut started getting traction right around the same time as hashtag release the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
And after it.
Mhm.
And people were talking because since Suicide Squad technically came out before Justice League, people felt that maybe Ayer's movie should be released prior to Zack's movie. And obviously that wasn't going to happen because the quote unquote Snyder cut was just getting so much attention worldwide. There was no
Yeah,
way
dude. That
that they could
that
move right, that they could move away from it. And
yeah.
thankfully, due to, you know, HBO Max and just the way things lined up, it was like, hey, this is a chance for us to put the movie out, you know. And
Mhm.
it was going to be like a TV show, but there was like rights or something like that that they didn't get to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, but in any case, that led to, you know, hashtag release the Ayer cut, and then all of a sudden, David Ayer just starts going online, you know, and talking
Yeah.
about it like this is the tone of my movie. And I shared a screenshot there of a um, Leto's Joker with half his face, you know, blown blown up there, but because that was in the trailers, you know, and then
Yeah.
it never made it into the movie. So just so much has come out about it over the years. I encourage you guys to go online and you know just check out that hashtag release the Ayer cut, and you'll see all the things online about it. But this is another movie that is absolutely a part of the Snyderverse,
Mhm.
and just the tone that Ayer talks about is nothing compared to the movie that we got. We just saw an interview that he had on John Bernthal's podcast. You know, he said, I made this dark, emotional movie, and then the studio turned it into an action comedy.
Yeah. It's that one's really sad because, that movie made a lot of money. It made a lot of money. So the studio kind of looked at it and go, "Hey, we were right. Like it made a lot of money." It wasn't critically loved. It was still, on the negative side critic wise, but they were like, "Look how much money we just made on this thing." And it's one of those things where as time went on and you started to hear David say a little bit more here and a little bit more there, you started to realize, oh wow, no, like he had his movie chopped up too. Like his movie got chopped up. And if you look at the marketing alone for that movie, if you look at the first trailer that they dropped at Comic-Con, it's got a very serious, dark, and soulful tone to it. It's with, like, I started a joke, and it's almost somber. And I remember being blown away, and you get the reveal of Jared Leto as Joker at the end, and there's this enormous applause. And I remember being like, wow, I really like the feel, because you and I both know that usually the first teaser for a movie is setting the tone for that film. And I was like, ooh, I like this. Like, I like this tone. I'm really happy. Guardians of the Galaxy was a big success, but I didn't want it to be Guardians. I didn't want a comedy. I was like, no, like, these are villains. Let's stay in this world that represents them best. And then after that teaser, we got our first trailer, and you could already see like the changes. And at the time we don't realize it, because we're just like, oh no, like this is the movie that they're marketing, it is what it is. But David started to open up more and more, and he started dropping photos, small clips, letting us know about Jared's performance, and just a completely different movie. And we talk about this. One of the best scenes in that movie is the bar scene, and I have a feeling that that's what the movie is as a whole, where you question the morality, the compass, the barometer of these characters, bad guys versus evil guys, and it's such a great scene. And I felt really bad for David, because I've always wanted a director's vision to be seen. Like when the Snyder Cut movement was happening, a lot of people would say, like, you just do that because you're a fan of Snyder. And like, while I am a huge fan of Snyder, yes, but I think that if a director has their movie chopped up, I think it's only fair that we get to see that movie. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been that way. I just like, no, I want to see it. Like, give me the Joel Schumacher cut. Give me the Ayer cut. Give me, if there's cuts that directors get, the Richard Donner cut of Superman. You know what I mean? Like, I am perfectly happy to watch those movies, even if I don't like it. I don't care. Like, I'll walk away from it saying, hey, like, that's their movie. They got to release it. I'm very happy for them. David just got a bad hand, man. He got a bad hand. And he played good for a long time, and he still won't badmouth the studio, which is great. You don't want to do that. But he's been really good about it and really hopeful. I hope it happens, man. I really, really do hope that in some way, shape, or form we do get to see the Ayer cut, because I do think there's something there. I believe in David Ayer. I think there's something in there.
So Ricardo just finished sharing his thoughts on David Ayer's Suicide Squad, and what I'm going to do now is touch on some of the things that I don't want to say released, but some of the things that we found out online that kind of give us a hint, or to let us know about the differences between the two movies. So
yeah,
first up, we have the pacing here. Apparently the Ayer cut is 20 minutes longer. Apparently it says here it was more chronological as opposed to all the flashbacks that we got in the studio cut.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Alrighty. So we talked about this here as well. It's supposed to be a little bit more serious in the tone, more of a drama, whereas the theatrical, and then darker in the lighting, whereas the theatrical was brighter with the lighting and then more lighthearted, with humor and action. So apparently Ayer gave us a deeper movie, so to speak. We also have a little bit of character development, more depth to the characters of Harley Quinn, Deadshot, and Enchantress, with more backstories to those three characters. Oh, here we go. Joker's portrayal in the Ayer cut was meant to be more intense and menacing, a force of nature rather than a prop, as described by Ayer. The damaged tattoo on his forehead was originally intended to be blessed, a detail Ayer now regrets. So that's a little bit of trivia there for you. Where he said Enchantress, she was going to get a bigger backstory. She would have been a bigger part of the movie. I want to say, was she like the big bad in his version, or just more of a major part to the ending?
Yeah. Maybe a major part to the ending, because it's like we're guessing based off of like little snippets here and there and like concept art, and it's like, yeah, she might have been the big bad for the movie, but yeah, it's hard to tell, to be honest.
So the Ayer cut would have included scenes of Joker attacking Arkham Asylum. Hello.
Yeah,
And
dude, come on.
a longer Batman chase scene. We did see Batman briefly in the movie, and a more detailed explanation of Slipknot's arrest. It would have also explored the relationship between Rick Flag and June Moon, and Amanda Waller's intentional release of Enchantress. The Ayer cut, as far as visuals and music, would have relied more heavily on Stephen Price's score and less on the pop songs featured in the theatrical release. It felt like it felt like the karaoke bar when you went to
I
see.
heard
Yeah.
I heard from so many people that they were like, it felt like music video after music video after music video. They just constant
we want to throw all these catchy songs at you to fool you into being like, oh, I like this. It's a studio tactic. They do it with their movies.
It is.
So.
And I'm a score guy. Like, I love score. So the fact that we, got a lot of score cut for these main hits, I was kind of like, oh man.
So here we go. The ending would have been more impactful, with Deadshot blowing up the portal and Enchantress being killed. So there's that. Obviously, what's his character's name? Diablo. Apparently
Diablo.
He lived.
He survives.
Yeah.
We've seen that image as well, where Diablo lives and he's standing with the survivors at the end. And Jay Hernandez shared it himself. He's like, yep, I want to see the Ayer cut where Diablo lives. You know what I mean? Where he was, because Jay Hernandez being, Hispanic, he's like, I wanted to see that Latin character survive. And I was like, yeah.
And also, I think there's images of Deadshot and Harley kissing.
Yes.
And I want to say that was not like a plot device. Apparently that happened because, and this, we haven't talked about it yet. Ayer focused more on the toxic nature of Joker and Harley's relationship. And over the course of the movie, it was almost like Deadshot was like, you don't deserve that. We don't know this, but it's like, you could be doing way better, not talking about himself, but maybe they kind of fall for each other with being there for each other with this emotional movie that Ayer had in mind. I mean, Deadshot's fighting for the sake of his daughter, and Harley's just fighting for her life, basically, because her and Joker have all this backstory built in. People forget this was not only Joker's introduction into the DCEU, it was Harley's introduction, period. Like, there had never been a live action introduction to Harley, and obviously you can't have Harley without Joker, because she's, her origin, Joker's a major part of her origin. She was his psychiatrist in the jail there, and long story short, she fell for him. It's a very deep story, and Ayer was going to explore that a little bit more, especially the manipulative and toxic nature of the romance later on. And those of you that are fans of Batman the Animated Series, where Harley made her first appearance and her biggest, most impactful appearance, some people might argue, they don't shy away from that. In that, medium there, that's how she came to be. And then once it went to the comics, they continued it. They didn't retcon it. They said, oh no, they don't have a nice relationship. We're going to keep that, be a part of this dynamic. They're together. They're not together. They are, they're not. He treats her good. He doesn't treat her good. Like, she keeps running back to him. And it's like, Ayer saw that and he said, you know what? This is an abusive, toxic relationship, and I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm going to put that front and center in this movie, because so many comic book fans and superhero fans romanticize this relationship. But you know what? I'm going to show the public, like, no, this is who Joker and Harley really are.
Yeah, because again, like, this was a lot of the world's introduction to Harley Quinn. If you're a comic book reader and you're into comic book cartoons, et cetera, you may know you know who Harley is. But Harley became a household name after Suicide Squad. There were general audiences who had no idea, and they only knew this character as being like, oh, so that's the Joker's girlfriend. Like, that's what it'd be. Oh, that girl, Harley Quinn must be Joker's girlfriend. And there's something much deeper about the relationship, and like you said, it's an abusive, toxic relationship. And I give so much credit for David for showcasing that. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately, because that's in his cut of the movie. But I remember after the studio release, one of the biggest Halloween costumes of that year was Harley Quinn.
Right.
And many people were romanticizing the relationship between Harley and Joker. And people wanted to go out as couples, as Harley and Joker. And it kind of let you know, like, oh, wow, like they're attaching themselves to this relationship in the movie that isn't as accurate as it could be. You know, they almost became like a Bonnie and Clyde. Like you have in the studio version, Joker's doing everything to save Harley, and he loves her and he misses her and he wants her back because he quote unquote loves her. Where in Ayer's cut, it's that abusive relationship, right? Where he does want her around, but it's a power play. Right. He controls her, he manipulates her. And we've seen those clips. We've seen clips from David Ayer that he's released of Joker just tearing her down verbally. There's a clip where he physically assaults her. He just backhands her, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And it's just one of those things where, like, I'm so grateful that he was like, no, like you said, I'm going to put a magnifying glass on this relationship. I'm not going to allow you to romanticize what it is. But the studio also made the decision, hey, we'd rather it be this way. We think we can do better by putting them as a loving couple. And it's just one of those things I'm like, I really want to see us cut. And that's one of the biggest reasons why.
Yeah, she in the studio version, she falls out of the helicopter.
Oh yeah.
In Ayer's version, Joker pushes her.
It's this.
So just yeah, there's a lot there. There's
like
a lot there.
Like it's so small, but one of my favorite scenes in the Ayer cut that he's released so far is that after Joker saves her in the movie, in the theatrical, he pulls her in. He's like, oh, I got some grape soda and a bearskin rug waiting for us. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But in his cut, as soon as he gets her on the plane, he scolds her. Right. He grabs her by her arm and he goes, I do for you. We're going to talk. And he's angry with her. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's accurate. So I hope we get to see it, man. I really do. The clips they're good teasers for now, but yeah, I'm glad that he wanted to explore what that relationship really was.
There's enough information out there where we can have a discussion about this, and we plan on it. And regardless of if the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad comes out or not, I think we can talk about this a little bit more. And we are going to hold off on doing a breakdown of the studio cut. Just in case that happens one day,
because it might, you never know.
You know, I would, and if there's a studio cut of David Ayer's Suicide Squad, the Panel Bros want to be able to do a breakdown for it. So we are going to hold off, in respect for the director and his true vision,
just in case, man. You never know; they might surprise us one day. I'm like, here you go on Max. I'm like, oh, we can finally do it.
Yeah. All right. So. Speaking of one that we can talk about a lot, so here we go. So what you're looking at is an online magazine, fanzine. What they went and did was they pieced together all of Zack Snyder's original storyboards for Justice League 2 and 3. Yeah. And we talked about this during our Zack Snyder's Justice League breakdown, that we didn't even know there was a 2 and 3. We thought there was maybe a 2. We may or may not touch on the fact that Kevin Smith kind of spilled it. He's like, oh no, there was a trilogy plan. And then more and more people started coming in and say, no, it was going to be a trilogy, So, these individuals here, they got together and they pieced together all the storyboards. It's about 20 pages long. And we want to be clear here. This was his original plan. This is not what would have happened, eventually.
And I think that's very important that you bring it up because, when the concept art came out, a lot of people saw things that they may have agreed with or not agree with, but Zack was very open. It's like, hey, these were these were like day one concept art plans, and a lot of the things did change. And we even saw some of those changes as early as Zack Snyder's Justice League. We saw those changes already implemented into his story. So yes, he was being 100% honest with us. Like, hey, these were the original ideas, but as time went on, as we were making the movies, some changes were made. But I do think it's cool that fans came together and was like, hey, like, let's try to give this an image. Let's try to show what this could have been like, even though some of the things were changed. It was like, this is a possibility of what could have been in a different timeline. But again, there were many changes.
Yeah, and oh man, just the ideas that just kept coming out when we found out like what Zack had planned. It was just like, oh my gosh, like this was going to be epic. It was going to be huge. It was going to be nuts.
it was, and again, and I said this to you off the air, like a lot of the stuff that we were seeing in the concept art, some of the stuff that probably was going to stick was made many years ago,
right.
many years ago. And if we were to see it today, it might feel very reminiscent of like Avengers Endgame, where you just have this big threat and everyone coming together. Because in the original concept art for Zack Snyder's Justice League movies, you had essentially the whole world coming together. You had all the heroes, you had villains,
right?
You had Riddler solving the anti-life equation. You just had these epic proportions. And I'll never forget the tagline that was in the concept art where it says, "The world has become the Justice League," because we were all going to come together and fight. And I thought that was so cool. So like you said, it was big, it was grand. It feels like when you saw the concept art, you were like, okay, this feels like an ending. You know what I mean? It's like, this feels like this is how you close this arc out and whatnot before we move on to whether we reboot or whatnot, the universe. But yeah, some of that concept art was crazy. Like it was stuff that I never thought we would see, period. And he was just like, no, like, there you go, here it is. And he talked about it, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and there was you know, there was like, I don't know if you want to, you don't really call it a script, but like, you know, there was stories attached.
Oh yeah,
there was storyboard, so there was writing. So a group on YouTube, take a look at Project Justice League if you get a chance. They went and did a motion comic for the storyboards, and it's about 40 minutes long. It's wild. You get a bunch of voice actors and such, and it's, you know, these folks did their best to do like some type of, you know, motion comic voice, you know, just to kind of what Zack's original vision would have been for Justice League 2 and 3. So, you know, you can check that out, folks. In the meantime, we're just going to do a couple bullet points here, but in the future, we will do a breakdown of, you know, once again, we're going to say Zack's original plan. You know, it's going to be a discussion, but there's 20 pages. So there's so much material. It's so many things to talk about. But in the meantime, just to give you guys some bullet points here. So the trilogy, so we're talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2 and Part 3. It was going to focus on the massive battle against Darkseid and exploring those themes of sacrifice and legacy. And it would have been, like you said, the world united, you know, Atlanteans, Amazons, humans, everyone united. And the key point would have been Barry Allen traveling back in time to warn Bruce Wayne about the future where Darkseid conquers Earth, that little scene that we saw in Batman.
Am I too soon?
Yes.
I'm too soon.
Right. That we finally would have gotten that payoff
together. Like
that payoff would have been awesome.
That's one of my I call it a regret, and I didn't make the movie or anything, but it's one of the worst, like, what could have been moments. Like, oh, we were gonna be full circle. We were so close.
We were gonna get the nightmare future, something that we saw in BVS.
Mad Max Justice League movie. Hello. Hello.
Yes, and then that future, Darkseid already won. You know, we have evil Superman, fueled by the anti-life equation. So that would have been nuts. And we got a little taste of that towards the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League. He went back and did a reshoot just to, guys,
to do that.
You know, I want to show you guys what was going to happen in Justice League 2.
Look, because he didn't have to do that at all.
No.
Like, that was Zack taking a swing, and I give Zack credit because Zack contacted the cast, and the fact that they were all down is amazing. Ezra Miller was currently filming Fantastic Beasts, and like, he wasn't even on there, and they were like, all right, we just need you in a room. We need you to film. We're going to put you into the movie like this and that. Like, they went above and beyond to get everyone together. They got Jared Leto as Joker. They had Amber Heard as Mara. You had Ray Fisher back. You had Ben Affleck back in the cow. Like, they made this happen. And he was like, listen,
Right.
Joe
Manganiello with
Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke,
with a mohawk.
The mohawk, bro. It was so awesome
right.
to see them come together and see what this timeline was leading to, and you get this great moment of seeing everything. And I always felt like it was Zack's way of saying, like, look, if we're done, we're done. But if we're not, if there's a possibility, here's where we were gonna go.
Right. So for
and I'll
anybody,
just leave that there.
Yeah, for anybody wondering, that was not going to be in his cut.
No, not at all.
He only did that because of the fan support of release the Snyder cut. So it was just like, hey guys, I want to give you a taste. So technically it's a part of Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that would have been in his sequels, either 2 or a combination of 2 and 3. So
yeah, like if they never touched Justice League, that definitely wouldn't have been a theatrical release. That was not that was not a thing.
Let's see here. Oh, Batman Sacrifice. So
yeah.
Central plot point would have been Batman's ultimate sacrifice to defeat Darkseid, ensuring the safety of Lois and the world. So Batman would have died.
Yeah. He was gonna die. Yep, he was gonna die.
Yeah.
It was gonna be the hero move, man.
So I don't know when it would have happened. I haven't seen the Project Justice League in some time, but we get to find out, and this is controversial here. We get to find out that so Superman dies, and while Superman is dead, in their mourning, Bruce and Lois comfort each other, and they end up beginning a romance where Lois ends up getting pregnant. And but Superman comes back, but then they don't know who the baby's father is, right? But or do they? I don't know.
I think
they named the baby Bruce.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was going to be revealed that they knew Bruce was essentially the father, and they were going to name the child after Bruce.
Okay.
Because of what happened. But again, that was one of those things that.
Well, she doesn't know she's pregnant until later on.
Yeah, she doesn't know. Like,
right.
That's why it's interesting, because the timeline gets a little iffy, because that's one thing that Zack retconned. Like, he retconned it. Like, he was like, because I remember him doing an interview when they were doing the releases of the movie in theaters, and he would have fan events and he would do Q&As, and he said that was one of the possibilities they explored, is that when people were in mourning, this is how they found comfort with each other. They spent time with each other, and it led from one thing to another. And then she was going to have Bruce's baby, and Clark was going to end up raising Bruce's baby, and that was going to be the end. But Zack said that was something that, he decided not to do. That's why in Zack Snyder's Justice League, they already introduced that while Clark has passed away and she already has the baby test at the end, she's carrying the baby stuff with Clark into the house, kind of like, all right, yeah, it's going to be Clark's. We got away with it, because it was controversial.
Right.
Like, it was quite controversial to a lot of people.
And let's talk about Nightmare Timeline. Lois was going to die.
Yeah, dude,
and that's what ended up getting Superman to turn and succumb to the anti-life equation. And we got to see that in those flashes of the Snyder cut, where Wonder Woman gets killed and Aquaman gets killed.
Again, none of that was going to be in the theatrical Justice League at all. Like,
right.
Zack was like, I'm going to put these in here.
I want to show pieces of Justice League 2 and 3 to show you guys what my vision would have been. So so that's pretty cool. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I hadn't realized those were quote unquote reshoots.
Yeah, dude. Like, yeah.
Those flashes of Justice League 2 and 3.
Like the flashes of Aquaman dying, Gal dying, like none of that was ever going to be in the theatrical releases, like at all. Like, no, like, again, Zack went above and beyond to be like, okay, this is for the fans. This is where we were going to go. Like, I'm not going to lie. I was shocked when I saw Wonder Woman was dead. I was like, what?
Put it in the movie.
What? Like, and it's like they made it, and I'm like, oh my god, like, we're going to see this amazing nightmare timeline. And unfortunately, we just didn't get to see it.
Right. And just as a reminder, unfortunately, Henry was the only one that didn't come back to do reshoots. So Zack just reused footage that he already had to put him, in those newer scenes. So pretty cool stuff. But there's so much here. apparently the Green Lanterns would have been a big part of it.
Yeah.
Just this epic battle, and we would have seen Kilowog. We would have seen,
dude.
John Stewart. And he wouldn't have been the only Green Lantern. There were a few of them.
There was a few.
There was so much planned. And you talk
there
about
was a few.
The Riddler. Like the
Riddler solving the anti-life equation.
What?
I never would have thought of that. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I was like, what? So like these were, and like you see the concept art, you see Lex, you see Riddler, you see these villains working together, and it's like, holy moly! Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, Black Manta was a part of the.
Black Manta was there, dude.
The group there,
like
the Injustice League.
Yes, Zack definitely had intended to do like a 5-film arc, and I think once the ball started rolling, I think that's why there were certain changes, because he's like, oh man, I could do something really epic here. Like I can get everybody. I can get Suicide Squad. Like they mentioned Harley Quinn in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Like he was pulling these characters. You know what I mean? So, what could have been?
Right. So so some of the storyboards that he discussed, he said, hey, some of that I'm keeping, and I'm showing you what would have happened,
Yes. I like Zack when he's coy about certain things, because he's like, well, come on, I don't want to give you everything. Like he goes, I don't want to tell you exactly. Like, I'm just letting you know, like, there's some ideas in here that we were going to do to some we started away from, but, I'm not going to give you 100%, because even Zack has always had that, like, never say never mentality. Like, he's like,
And you know what? Looking back, I'm curious how the studio, or why the studio gave him the okay to do those reshoots. I mean, he didn't require a studio. Most of it was done digitally.
He did it at his house. Like he shot the Green Lantern stuff at his house, and he shot the stuff with Ben Affleck and Jared Leto and the cast at his house. And Ben Affleck has openly talked about it, again, like, we just went to his house and we shot and we did it. And again, kudos to those actors for being like, yeah, let's do this. You know what I mean?
And so I guess most of that was CGI with the nightmare flashes.
Yeah.
I don't know how they got the Wonder Woman.
Dude,
the Wonder Woman scene looked like it was shot.
It looks great. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, hold on, how did we do this? Right. I'm like, was this,
because it's Gal with the coins, and then you see all the Amazons mourning her. So
like Gal look,
I don't know.
Gal looks like she could be 100% CGI, like really, really, really good CGI. But everyone else around, I'm like, is this a cut scene? Like, how did they make this happen?
Yeah,
but he definitely shot some stuff to add that he didn't have to, and it's
just a matter of what he already had shot versus what he had not. Had
shot,
obviously.
Because I was like, man.
Yeah, I mean, we know for a fact the scene with Lois dead and Superman on his knees. We know that obviously that's something that was new, because Henry wasn't there and he wanted it to be a part of the movie. So, But once again, we can talk about Justice League 2 and 3 so much. But just to give you guys a little bit of hint there, because the storyboards are out there, we have a foundation. So we can look at it and we can talk about it and discuss it. So we will have a separate discussion about that. So please just stay tuned for that. That's going to be one day down the line. All righty. So now we're getting into just even more stuff here. This is the one that I talk about a lot. And
is it? Yeah, I knew it. I was like, it's the Batman. I think it's the Batman.
Affleck's the Batman. Oh boy. All right. So this is pretty much, if we looked at that, remember that original release dates, this was supposed to come out like within 2 years of Justice League, a year or two. And we know this because at the very end, you see Deathstroke get introduced.
Oh, yeah.
And Lex was just like, I just need you to do something. I need you to kill Batman for me, And he's just like, well, he's Bruce Wayne. And they just kind of lay the foundation. It's just like, oh, so that would have been like the little lead into Ben Affleck's The Batman. Obviously, it went through so many different things, scripts, and then different directors, and eventually it became an Elseworlds, the Batman story. This movie would have been so epic. Who was it that read it?
Jay Oliver. I pulled it up now.
Okay.
I was looking for it now. I was like, no, I want to find who quoted it.
Okay.
And it was Jay Oliver, who considered Batman script to be the best Batman script he'd ever read.
Ridiculous.
I remember.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so Jay Oliver, he's a writer and director. He's worked with Zack. I want to say he worked on the storyboards with Zack as well. And also he directed the Flashpoint animated movie. So if you guys just wanted to look
great
at that.
movie, go watch that.
Amazing.
Even Matt Reeves, who ended up directing his version of the Batman, said that Ben Affleck's script was great. Like he was like, it's great. It just wasn't the story he wanted to tell. This is a very, very, very sad case of like, what if? Like what if we would have gotten it? And hearing the reports of a Ben Affleck directed, written, and starring, and Ben Affleck was Ben Affleck's got some great movies under his belt as a director. So we were all looking forward to it. And he had mentioned in interviews that one of the biggest takeaways of working with Zack on Batman v Superman was getting a taste to film this type of a movie, this big of a movie, this scale, whether comic book or superhero, et cetera, et cetera. So we were looking forward to it, you know what I mean? And I remember, reading that quote from Jay Oliver, like one of the best Batman scripts he's ever read. And I'm like, that's amazing. And little by little, things started to, I don't know, I guess you could say fall apart. Things just started to change very quickly. And if I'm not mistaken, this was after the release of Justice League, correct? Like after Justice League, that's when things started to get real shaky because Ben started to had kind of a bad experience with Justice League. Don't know, and then Matt Reeves was coming in as a director, and things just started changing very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, the timeline's shaky for me too. I believe it was between the release of BVS and Justice League where there was discussions of this happening, and I don't think it was announced that it was abandoned until after Justice League. It's hard to remember, but
yeah,
I do remember the announcement happened after Batman v Superman was released. I do remember that. So we have a timeline. And I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility because they went through that tumultuous time of shooting Justice League versus when it was released and such. So, but yeah, and oh man, I'd love if Ben Affleck could just sit down and just discuss.
I want to read the script, bro. Like I've been that guy where it's like, leak the script. Someone leak it. I don't care. Just leak the script. I want it.
Yeah. And apparently Chris Terrio was one of the people working on the script as well.
Dude.
Yeah, he was a part of the Batman v Superman script, and he worked on Argo, which
dude,
got Affleck that Best Picture Oscar.
That Oscar, man. Like,
yeah, so let's just take a look at these bullet points here. Once again, this is another one where as more information comes out, this is a discussion that that the panel bros can have and just really go into it. So it would have followed Deathstroke, played by Joe Manganiello, as a primary antagonist who dismantles Bruce Wayne's life, both as Batman and as a public figure. Yeah. It was also heavily rumored to feature Arkham Asylum as a central location and explore the darker side of Batman's psyche. For those of you that are a fan of the Rocksteady Arkham trilogy, that first game, Batman Arkham Asylum, that's what it sounds like it would have been. Just everything at Arkham Asylum, or a major bulk of the movie, being at Arkham Asylum. So we're talking about just cameos left and right.
Yeah, dude.
Of, in my opinion, the greatest rogues gallery.
Gallery. We were going to see a rogues gallery potentially, and just the idea going to Arkham and Deathstroke taking out those close to Batman, close to Bruce. Like, we were there, man. Like, I was so excited.
So Deathstroke's revenge was going to be a main part of it, and he's seeking revenge on Bruce Wayne for the death of his son. And we have no idea how that happened. We just know that was going to be the plot point there. Deathstroke's attacks would have been multi-layered here, targeting Bruce Wayne's public image, his ability to fight crime, and his personal life. So it was just going to be a mental and psychological warfare. I think about just the acting that Ben Affleck would have had to present in this movie to make it work. We talked about Arkham Asylum, showcasing many of the Batman villains, which never got a confirmation, but we would have seen them there.
And I know you remember this. Ben Affleck, remember, he tweeted while filming Justice League,
Yes,
Deathstroke walking out of the hangar. And that was Ben being like, this is what I'm doing. And there's speculation that at the time there was some behind the scenes pull where someone was trying to pull something or change something about Batman or Ben Affleck's future film. And Ben was like, no, because I remember it was quite shocking to be like, why would he drop that? It was like, whoa, like that's a major reveal. Like that's it. And he was like, no, and he dropped it. And it was like, whoa. So like we were going to have Deathstroke for the first time in a wide theatrical release. And Ben Affleck was like, this is where we're going. And knowing that Ben was excited, Ben was ready. And to have this psychological warfare with this character and Bruce, and to set it up at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, depending on which version, but setting that up moving forward, it was like, oh man, like, and that's one of the differences too between Zack Snyder's Justice League and Justice League. If you watch Justice League, it ends with Lex Luthor saying we should have a league of our own.
Right.
That's pretty much it. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, Zack was being like, hey, we're going to help set up Ben's movie. And he's like, hey, this Batman is Bruce Wayne. And it's like, oh, like we're clearly setting up the Batman. You know what I mean? And it just didn't happen.
So we touched on it before, but apparently the movie was described as a psychological exploration of Batman with a focus on his mental state and his struggle to maintain control. So he was starting to lose it because of everything Deathstroke was doing to him. And clearly a possible Joker appearance. There's no doubt in my mind Joker would have been in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think at least at the very minimum, like a good dialogue scene between the two.
Yeah. Maybe in Arkham Asylum, something like that. Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, was rumored to play a significant role in the film, potentially teaming up with Batman in the final battle. So that was another thing. Here we go. The death of Alfred. The movie was also rumored to feature the death of Alfred, a plot point that was also considered for the Snyder cut of the Justice League. So I don't know if this was going to happen because just how well, we don't know because Justice League 2 hadn't happened yet. And Alfred was still in Justice League at the very end. So maybe it might have. Yeah. It might have happened,
That's a big move, man.
Yeah.
That's a big, you're taking out Alfred.
Bye-bye, Jeremy Irons. He's gone,
Like, that's a bold move. That's a big swing.
So that's some of the stuff we've seen. There's plenty more out there. I've also read just the Bat family was going to be, explored. And you can't have a Batman movie without talking about, some of the Robins. We don't know. Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake. We don't know who would have been explored, but it's been confirmed. Zach put it out there that the dead Robin is Dick Grayson.
Yeah. I got that got a lot of controversy too.
Yeah, so
it was Dick. Yeah.
In my mind, I want that flashback. I want that flashback of when he died. Maybe he's in. Maybe they show it. Maybe that's just something we talk about, but we don't see. Show don't tell, don't show. But you have to show, don't tell. But that would have been pretty cool. I don't know, just so many different things. I think about the League of Assassins. I think about Ra's al Ghul. Maybe him. Maybe Talia would have made an appearance. We don't know. Like
we don't know.
There was so
again,
much.
This script is out there. Like somebody just get it. Okay, someone pull a Ryan Reynolds Deadpool move. Just leak it.
Yeah, like, I'd be happy if I just read it. I'd be good.
I want to read it. That's all I want. I just want to read it, man. I just want to read what he had in mind for these characters. Did Ben want to do like a one-off, like just be able to do this one standalone Batman movie, call it a day? Would he be interested in doing more? Because look, let's be honest, like playing Batman is hard. Like he talked about, it's a very difficult role, especially wearing that suit for long hours, the cowl. So I couldn't imagine what it would have been like for Ben to direct the movie as well as be Batman, especially in those sequences. That could have been very, very, very tough. But if I could just get the script, just give me that script, man.
Yeah. What did I read? That somebody was rumored to play Batgirl. Is it Jenna Malone?
Yes, because I remember seeing her name. But then she appeared in Batman.
Or was she supposed to be Carrie Kelly? I remember he wanted Carrie Kelly.
Yeah, I don't recall, but I remember there was rumors that Jenna Malone was going to be Barbara or something, and then she appears in the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. Right. She's in one scene, so it's like, oh, I guess that's Al. I guess that's not.
That's true. Right. Like, right. Correct.
Yeah. So that was a big rumor that they wanted her. So yeah, I'm curious who else he would have introduced, and I think he would have introduced other people from the Bat family, even if it was just one, because I think we might have explored a little bit, especially if the storyline you have going in the Batman is that Deathstroke is trying to get vengeance because he blames Batman for the death of his son. It would be only logical to also bring up the fact that Batman lost his quote unquote son when he lost Dick Grayson. A lot of people were very upset about Dick Grayson being the one. I was kind of confused to take it back and say, wait, it's not Jason. And in Zach's words, he wanted to, which Robin death would hurt Bruce the most, that would turn him to the point that he is in BVS. What could push him to that point? And he's like, oh, it would be Dick Grayson, like that. So I do think we would have some sort of acknowledgement, again, especially if the story is Deathstroke's son has been killed. I could see him trying to get through to Batman by explaining, what it is to lose a son. You lost Dick Grayson and you took mine from me. So I think we would have got something in there.
So Jenna Malone was tied to both roles. She was tied to both Batgirl and Carrie Kelly. And then Zach on Vera one day said that Carrie was going to come in one day, but clearly she didn't end up playing either of those. She just played somebody else,
Yeah.
But we were going to get a Batgirl, and Ben Affleck's the Batman, and I just feel like so much was left on the table. Like, I would like to think that maybe not show Dick Grayson, but just flashbacks of it happening, or or him talking about it, or just we never even hear the name Dick Grayson.
No, we don't. We literally get the suit of Robin,
and then that's
it. That's it. Again, to the point where people were just like coming up with theories on who it could be, because there was no confirmation until years later where he was like, yeah, it's Dick. So yeah, I would be shocked if there's at least not one mention in that script. I think there's at least one. Like, there's got to be.
Right. And Batman has such a vast history. There's just so much that they could have done in that movie that would have just been such a, Easter eggs, it would have been a love letter to Batman fans.
Yes. And I think because Ben has been very open. Ben is a huge Batman fan. Yeah. Like, Ben loves Batman. He said one of the reasons why he took the role of Daredevil was he thought it was the closest he was ever going to be to playing Batman. So he took it. So he's a big fan. So when you have someone who's that big of a fan, they're going to do something special with the character, and especially when it comes to Easter eggs. At least the idea, again, I think the idea of setting this around Arkham was his way of introducing some of the Rogues Gallery, because even if he didn't get to have full films with Joker or with Two-Face or with Poison Ivy, he could find a way to, like, how can I give people at least a little bit? Okay, let's do some stuff with Arkham, and that would have been cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if the whole movie was in Arkham, but I'm imagining this like Die Hard movie in Arkham, but more of a psychological thriller, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, just like, look, we're already doing it right now. Like, this is something we can talk about separately, and there's more stuff that just keeps coming out about it. And who knows? Maybe we'll get a hold of that the Batman script one day.
Somebody get that script. Get it. We will read it. We will put it on here and we will perform. Just get it. Get the script, please.
While I would love to see Justice League 2 and 3, just to see Zack finish this movie, Ben Affleck's The Batman is the one movie it's most anticipated for me as a Batman fan.
And I get that too, and I understand it too, because again, there's this idea, and we said it earlier, like, Zack Snyder's Justice League was such a victory and such a win that I'm like, okay, like, if someone said, Rick, that's as far as you're gonna get, I'm like, all right, cool, there it is, we won, we got it. Now the Ben Affleck movie was never even shot. Like that's the one that got away. It's like, wait a minute, where is that movie? Where is that movie? Where is Ben Affleck's The Batman?
Right.
So yeah.
All right. So we got one more movie to touch on here, and until recently, there wasn't much information on this. And then Jay Oliver went online and he spilled the beans on the trilogy that was planned for this movie. So we are talking about The Flash. So
oh yeah.
So you're seeing a screenshot from the DC Comics version of Flashpoint. You know, in the background there, you see Cyborg and Aquaman and Thomas Wayne as Batman. And
oh my God,
there's just so much potential for this movie here. Now, he had gotten Rick Famuyiwa to direct this. And by the way, we had to do this another time. There's a picture of all the directors sitting around each other. It was pretty much all the directors of the Snyderverse. There was just so much planned, and it looked like they were all just coming together for Zack's vision. You know, he was going to let them do their thing, but they were all coming together for Zack's vision here. But there isn't much known about the Flash movie. There were rumors that possibly Cyborg and Wonder Woman were in it, but we're not sure. But I'm just going to read some tidbits here of the things that Jay Oliver said, and then we're just going to react to it there. So he said Rick's movie wasn't the Flashpoint movie. Originally, there was supposed to be just Zack's 5 films, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
Man of Steel, BVS, and the 3 Justice League movies, which ended up, and one side movie, which ended up being Suicide Squad. But after that, the success of Man of Steel, that's when Warner decided to go all in on a cinematic universe. So that's what ended up happening there. Rick's movie was going to be a series of films, just like Aquaman. So remember, Aquaman got greenlit for a sequel because the first one made $1 billion.
Yep.
But they had a series of movies planned for Flash. So here we go. We would have seen Eobard Thawne, aka Professor Zoom.
Hold on. listen, and I'm not gonna get sidetracked, but do you remember reading? And I don't know if this is exactly from Zack, but wasn't there a rumor that Eobard Thawne was going to be the reason why a lot of things happened in the Snyderverse?
So it's still a part of the quote here that Jay said. Check this out. He said, Rick's movie was laying the groundwork for Zoom as the big baddie of the DC universe.
Yes, okay.
It was Professor Zoom pulling the strings because he had come from the future to basically F with Barry. In a Flash movie, Zoom would be the villain in the background, but also in the ancillary other films where you would see some of the influences of Zoom on the rest of the Justice League. So yes, you know, at the end of Zack's Dark Side quadrilogy or whatever we end up with in the Justice League Unlimited version of the Snyderverse. So it would have been like the Justice League Unlimited, which, by the way, amazing show.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, live action for the Snyderverse. And then you flip it. And he said you do Flashpoint Paradox. So Flash 3, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's like down the line. It would have been Flashpoint. And then you could reboot the universe and introduce a new cast that way. Because after 10 years, the actors need to go on and do something else. And then I don't have it in front of me. Your boy, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, comes out.
Oh, my God.
And says there were plans to have myself and Lauren Cohan come back for the Flashpoint movie.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Thomas and Martha Wayne and Flashpoint end up becoming Flashpoint Batman and Flashpoint Joker, respectively.
Yep.
So, wow. You know, like Jay Oliver pretty much confirms, oh, no. We were going to bring back Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohan for that.
Yeah. And like, you can't help but think that, again, this was all part of a plan at one point. Like, no, like Jay says, like that was the move. And, you know, there were many people who, when the Flash movie was announced, the one that we got released, and it was Flashpoint. People were like, wow, already? Like, we're just doing it right now. And it's because things had changed and shifted. They wanted to reboot the universe sooner rather than later. But yeah, it made more sense that like this was going to be a trilogy with the Flash character, potentially with the third movie being a Flashpoint Paradox film, where that would ultimately lead to this new version of a universe. And what a great way to do it. Using Flashpoint is brilliant. Like, it's like, wait a minute, like, not only can you reboot or remake the universe, you can do it within the context of this story, you know? And I thought that would have been really, really exciting to see. But ultimately things ended up changing quite a bit. You know, we went through directors and we went through like tons of stories.
Right. So once again, we look back on that first image we shared here. You know, this was the plan, but then there would have been more expansions on it as well, you know? Because you see that there was more movies planned after Justice League 3.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there was more movies, but, you know, it kind of, now that I'm, you know, just reading what Jay said, to me, it sounds like, okay, so Justice League was the epic trilogy, but now we're going to give you another epic trilogy, but in the form of the Flash movies, because Flashpoint is the event film.
Man,
that's going to be the event film.
That's Flashpoint in itself is such an event film. Like it's big. Like that is, you're talking about multiple characters coming through, different versions of these characters, different timelines. Like, yeah, dude, like that's an event film.
If you ever read it or watch the animated movie, you will know what we're talking about. Like, you don't even have to read or see the movies leading up to it. Watch it by itself, and you have any knowledge. We're getting sweaty here, folks.
Oh yeah.
There any knowledge of the DC universe to see what could have happened, and I don't know how much of that they would have put in the live action Flash movie, the original one, you know, not the one that we got. But, you know, there's just a bunch of wild stuff. Well, we kind of saw it a little bit with Supergirl. You know, it was like Superman got captured and they kept him sick, you know, from being under the red kryptonite.
Yellow sun,
yeah. They kept them away from the yellow sun. And then we have, you know, we have Cyborg, and we have what is it? Wonder Woman, and doesn't she kill Mara?
Kills Mara, dude. She decapitates her,
and then she gets with Aquaman, with Arthur.
Yeah, dude. Like, it's like, what?
It's
like
nuts.
There's so much that has changed, all because of Barry altering the timeline, and it's just like, what? And like Flashpoint is so big, and I know they wouldn't have gone this route, but Flashpoint in itself could be a trilogy. Like, Flashpoint is big. Like you can make 3 2-hour movies and be like, dude, this is epic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't have much on Flash. It's just after Jay Oliva said that, and then Jeffrey Dean Morgan comes out, it's like, oh, we got to talk about this a little bit. You know, like Ia Barthon was gave me the one pulling the strings. Like, hold up. Like, you mean to tell me that like they're not? So now, like, and they've done this, you know, with the TV show and in the comics, where you go back and you'll see like a flashback, but then you see Zoom in the background, messing around and doing things, you know? So it's like, just when you think that like, all right, well, Darkseid, we're done dealing with you. It's just like, no, now we have Zoom, this guy that can alter the past.
Yeah. Like,
you know?
if people, again, like I would say, casual fans, when you think of a character like Flash or Zoom, you're like, oh, they're just fast. Like, that's it. And it's like, bro, these guys can manipulate time itself. Like, that is exceptionally dangerous. So to be able to look back and see Eobard Thawne in different places in time, altering things, changing things, like that could have had catastrophic
like,
results.
Guess what, Barry? You want to know who killed your mom? It was me.
You know what I mean? Like, and we don't even get that with the version that's released. Like, it's just never touched on. It's like, oh no, his mother's murdered.
Right. They don't say who did it.
That's it. Like, we don't tease it. We don't do anything. It's just like, okay, like, okay, all right, yo, all right. Well,
yeah, I mean, and you know, we know that canon. We know it's Zoom. Zoom is the one that did that. You know, it's like, why? Because I hate you. I hate everything about
all
you.
All the way back.
You've made my life a living hell, and I want to make yours a living hell. So yes, it was me, Barry. It was me the whole time. Like,
yeah, dude.
Like Zoom is evil. Like, he's so evil. Like, we've watched the Flash TV show. We don't want to get into that show too much, but just early versions of, zoom, it's like that is not even close to how evil this character is. Like, they did an okay job on the TV show, but just how evil he is in the comics and then the animated movies, like, you guys do not understand the potential that we had if we ever got to see this villain, in the DC universe, the Snyderverse and such. So, alrighty, so let's I'm gonna share that screen one more time because it's just the original plan, and fans have come up with art for like what the new one would look like. I didn't want to do that. This is just what the original was going to be. And like looking at it, my thing is like apparently Green Lantern Corps would have been the last movie, but I don't think they would have just ended it there.
No, because if they would have gotten to this point, they would have been seeing dollars, man. They'd be like, all right, let's keep it going. Like,
because if you look at it, like, it's, we have Justice League Part 1 and then Flash, Aquaman, and then that would have been the Batman. And then that would have made like so much money, so then they would have been talking about a Batman trilogy maybe, and then following year, just Shazam, Justice League Part 2. And then that would have been like maybe the Superman movie. Oh yeah. So Justice League 3 isn't on here. There we go. So that would have been that would have been down the line as well. So just all these movies and just, what would have been, so we're going to start closing things down now. We touched on a lot of different movies today. We laid the groundwork to keep coming back to this because we want to, because there's just so much that we keep finding out about the canceled Snyderverse. And there are other fans out there that are just like us that still have an interest in this and maybe not rallying for it to come back, because let's be honest, folks, that's a pipe dream. That's a pipe dream. We're happy. We won. We got Zack Snyder's Justice League.
That's always my takeaway is like, we won. Like, look, if anything happens, I'll be the first to buy a ticket. Like, I'm ready to go.
Right.
But that was the victory, man. Like, that was an amazing win for us.
But there's just so many questions that we want answered, and it'll be really fun to just explore just what would have been and what could have been with the Snyderverse. So that's as far as my thoughts go. Ricardo, how about your closing thoughts as far as the Snyderverse goes?
Yeah, it's one of those things again where it's bittersweet because there are many films in that universe that I absolutely love and wouldn't change anything about them. And then there's times where I'm like, man, I wish we would have been continued. I wish we would have been allowed to continue, because we've said this to each other off the air. Had the plan just stayed the course, the universe would have finished. It would have wrapped up. They would have rebooted, and there would be, better faith among the fans. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. Studio was very reactionary, and they reacted. And people, directors, suffered because of it. Zack Snyder's movie got chopped. David Ayer's movie got chopped. The Flash went through crazy, like, purgatory and issues and whatnot because they were trying to figure out and struggle. Like, what are we doing? We're talking about cancellation of movies. You know what I mean? Like, while they're filming. So the Snyderverse as a whole, with what we've gotten from it, I'm very happy that we got it. I'll always wonder what it would have been like to continue. I think the groundwork was laid. I think it was all there. That was one thing I do appreciate about the Snyderverse, was that it felt cohesive. Again, everything felt like it belonged. We were moving on to this and moving on to that. Because again, there are people today that probably have superhero fatigue, right? There are a lot of people like, I'm kind of burnt out. And for the MCU, for example, while they have many successful films, a lot of people are like, oh man, I feel like there's no end in sight. And people get fatigued by that. And they're just like, oh, like, okay, so what's next? So what's next? So what's next? And I do appreciate that the Snyderverse, that Zack had gone in with this idea of like, okay, I have a beginning, middle, and end. I have a 5-film arc. The studio sees money with these characters. They want to continue to go in certain directions, and that's great. But I do love the fact that Zack had made it a point of like, nope, I'm going to come in, tell my stories. We're going to have a nice little middle section, a climax, and that'll be the end of it. And I think that's the way to go with shared universes. I like the idea of a beginning, middle, and end. I'll always wonder, man. It's like the girl that got away. You know, I was just
Yeah.
sitting there like,
And
maybe again, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't.
if it ever happened, outside of Justice League 2 and 3, I don't see the studio greenlighting any other movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, maybe the Batman, but we're getting real sticky, situation there,
yeah,
because we already have Matt Reeves as the Batman universe. So I think you're just
yeah.
looking at Justice League 2 and 3. If this is a
If
big
yeah,
if
yeah,
it ever happens, and I don't think it gets us a worldwide release. I think it's just an HBO Max project.
yeah.
If it ever happens, but now, so we can talk about this. The DCU,
Mhm.
with that being the main focus of the studio, if this ever happens again, I don't even think it would be anything close to what Zack's original plan was. If he ever brings these actors back again, like, to me, you're looking like at a Kingdom Come situation,
Oh, okay.
with older, because the actors are going to be older,
Yes.
so so that's just my thoughts on the matter. If
Yeah.
we ever brought the Snyderverse back one day, this is like a pipe dream,
Yeah.
uh, because let's just be honest and accept the fact that there is a new universe.
Yeah.
The DCU, led by James Gunn, is the current universe, and this is until further notice.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
would so many things would have to happen, and I'm not just talking about shutting down the DCU, because they could just keep that and
Mhm.
then let the Snyderverse do its own thing over here on the side. Um, that's if that happens. Also, there's rumors of uh, um, another studio sale. After the
Yeah.
merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery, people thought there was hope, and
Mhm.
that hope brought us Zack Snyder's Justice League. But people thought that maybe it could continue and they could bring him back again for something, but that didn't happen. Now there's a rumor that Warner Brothers is going to sell off the DC portion,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
fans are rallying again, like, um, to bring back the Snyderverse through that studio, whoever gets it.
Mhm.
And once again, this is if Warner Brothers actually goes forward and sells it off. And I'll be honest with you, if that happens, it doesn't look good for the DCU. I don't think
Mhm.
so, because I don't see a new studio wanting to continue with somebody else's vision. And then once again, that doesn't make me too confident that they would want to do Zack's vision or Gunn's vision, anybody's vision. They want to do their own
Yeah.
vision if a
Yep.
new studio gets it one day.
Yeah, they're gonna want a new hot and upcoming director. They're gonna want new
Yeah.
flavor. Like at the end of the day, the studios want money, right? They want
Right.
money. We talked about this. On an unrelated note, Paramount is bringing Michael Bay back to do Transformers.
Right.
They made some movies without him, which are critically well received. Financially, box office wise, they wish those movies made more, and they're pulling an old rabbit out of the hat. And they're like, we're getting Michael Bay back for a Transformers movie. Studios care about money. So if we were talking about a sale, we're going to talk about a studio that I'm sure it'll be in the conversation, but there's no guarantee. I'm sure the conversation will be like, okay, how do we guarantee money on this thing? Do we want to go in a new direction? Do we want to potentially keep the DCU with James Gunn? We want to bring him over and continue? Do we want to go back to Zack? That's still got a lot of chatter. Like it would be in the conversation, but again, more than likely, I feel like studios always want a fresh start. They want their fresh start because they believe they know the way to make all the money. Like, oh, we know what we're going to do here. So it would take a lot, man. There's a lot of moving pieces. And you're not just talking about from a studio perspective. You're talking about from a cast perspective. You're talking about writer. You're talking about the director. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of pieces. And I feel that even some of the actors have moved on in a
Yeah.
sense, like I feel like they've kind of been like, okay, like that was a chapter in my life. Like we forget how long ago it was, dude. Like we're talking like 2016, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like when it was originally supposed to come out, and we're in 2025. Like it's been a long time, I think it would take a lot to get this movie, a lot more than some people think.
Yeah.
So we got to take that into consideration.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just want us to be clear. This was not a podcast about bringing the Snyderverse back. Absolutely not. This is
If it
us.
happens, I'm all about it. But yeah, we
Right.
can't like, yeah.
No, this was us looking back on what could have been and what would have been.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's for us. I'm going to speak for both of us. It's a pipe dream.
Mhm.
It's like there's no way. There's no way. If it happens, absolutely. But in the meantime, no, we're just going to, see what happens with the current DCU. And we're going to continue having our discussions about, Zack's vision as we should, since we love movies so much, we want to explore that because there's so much that was left on the table. So that's as far as that goes. And that brings our talk to an end here. So, folks, I just wanted to thank you for listening here. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe at the Panel Bros on YouTube. We would appreciate it. The more you do that, that helps our reach. Also, if you could leave a comment below, letting us know how you felt about our discussion on the Snyderverse. What were some of your favorite moments of the Snyderverse? What parts of the Snyderverse that we never got to see would you like to see? And how do you feel about the Snyderverse coming back one day? Are you for it? Are you not for it? Are you like us? You're just happy with what you got and you want to see what Warner Brothers has planned for the future? Please let us know in the comments below. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.